Yo, what's up, man? Hector here, the Kettlebell coach. In this video, we're going to talk about the 5 principles to building muscle with kettlebells. So this video comes to you from a question from one of the members of the community. Shout out to at Eduardo Cruz 8185. He said, if you could make more videos, kettlebell for building muscle, exclamation mark. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So before I get into it, I want to set some context here for what building muscle with kettlebells means. And it does not mean looking like a puffed up bodybuilder slash powerlifter. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is that long, like lean tone, like just trying to paint a picture in your head, the athletic look. So imagine like Ryan Reynolds and like Blade Trinity, or just like the Ryan Reynolds esque physique is a long, lean, and toned muscular body. All right. So I'm not talking about putting on 30 pounds of muscle or anything like that. We're talking about putting on, maybe 5 to 10 pounds of muscle over the course of, let's say 4 to 6 months. Okay. So I just wanted to set some context there of what we mean by building muscle with kettlebells. So principle number one. So why principles? Because principles they can be applied to anything versus saying like, here's the exact way, here's the exact thing that you need to do. So it's not always black and white. A lot of the times we live in a gray area here. So when it comes to building muscle with kettlebells, if you follow these principles, it's going to be more repeatable for you based on your lifestyle, etc. So principle number one, when it comes to building muscle with kettlebells, is you have to set your foundation first. What do I mean by this? You have to build your connective tissue. It's very common to see, like I mentioned, bodybuilders as an example, and this isn't putting bodybuilding down. This just is what it is. These are the facts. Bodybuilders that put on a lot of muscle really fast, sometimes too fast, you see people get injured that are following more of a bodybuilding style template because their body's more for show, not for go. It's more show muscle than go muscle. And so when you put on a lot of muscle really fast, your connective tissue, it takes, I don't know the exact time, but it takes time for your tendons and all of your connective tissue to catch up with that added weight and that added muscle that you've put on your body, because it's that energy that transmits from your nervous system through the connective tissue to tell your muscles what to do. And if you put on 20, 30 pounds of muscle because you're on special vitamins, it's very common to get injured, muscles tearing, from the tendon, etc. So building your connective tissue is number one. And that's one of the hidden values of strength training with kettlebells is they build your connective tissue. And the exercise that I feel and that I believe and that I've come to believe is the best for doing this, that everybody can learn, that is probably the most overlooked exercise, is the kettlebell clean. In my opinion, kettlebell clean is the center of the universe when it comes to strength training with kettlebells. It does several things here. In the clean, you're producing, reducing, and redirecting force. So it teaches your body how to absorb shock. And as it does that, you strengthen your tendons and connective tissue through your grip, your elbows, your forearms, midsection. It builds all that connective tissue there. So I recommend building your foundation first through building your connective tissue and starting with the kettlebell clean. I don't recommend starting with the swing. I recommend starting with the clean. So from there, we've got 3 layers here that we want to build on that foundation. So imagine like a pyramid. Okay. So the bottom of the pyramid, we want to focus on building our foundation through functional movements. What are functional movements? These are the 4 exercises that we take our students through the first level of the academy. Level 1 of the academy are these 4 exact exercises because they build your foundation and they build your connective tissue. So number 1, the clean. Kettlebell clean, you're working on your hip hinge and your lower body pull. Then we have the kettlebell press. Obviously, that's your push, your overhead press movement. So that's going to build your midsection. It's going to build your shoulders. It's going to build everything from the ground up. The squat's probably the most fundamental exercise that everybody should be doing. And the lunge, right? The gait pattern. So just within those 4 exercises, we're getting lower body pull with the clean, and by holding the bell in the rack position, redirecting the force, absorbing the force, and holding that bell in the rack, you've got your carry. So we've got lower body pull and we've got carry. We also have hip hinge. So in one exercise, this is why I say I think the kettlebell clean is the most valuable, and the center of the universe is around the clean, because with the clean, you've got hip hinge, you've got lower body pull, and you've got carry. You've got 3 of the 7 fundamental movement patterns in one exercise. One of our core philosophies of the Hardstyle Academy is less is more approach to strength training. How can I get the biggest bang for my buck with fewer moving parts? How can I get more with less? And when I say get more with less, I'm not talking about being lazy and not doing the work. No, what I'm talking about is how can I be super effective and efficient with what I'm doing that will yield the best results. So the kettlebell clean right out of the gate, it hits 3 of the 7 fundamental human movement patterns. So you got the clean there. So that's exercise number 1. Then we have the press. So you got your overhead push. Then you've got your squat. And then from the squat, you've got lunge. And if you're training with single kettlebell, you're working anti-rotational forces. So we got rotation, anti-rotational training there. So within those 4 exercises, we're covering all 7 fundamental movement patterns to build your foundation. So as you build that foundation, build your connective tissue, number 1, through functional movements. And those are the 4 exercises that we'd recommend. Those are all compound exercises as well. So they're going to cross multiple joints. So it's going to build a total body, total strength. It's going to open up opportunities, of course, with nutrition, getting leaner. You're building a stronger, leaner, more capable body just with those 4 exercises. The second part of that, so at the bottom of that pyramid, the bottom of that foundation, we have functional movements. From there, the next level up is building functional performance. This is where we start to build what you call general physical preparedness. Right? The acronym for that is GPP. So you may have heard that term. GPP. This is where you build your work capacity. And so what we do is we take our clients of the Hardstyle Academy, we take them through a concept called performance progression training. But ultimately what this is building their functional performance. And so what we teach them is when and how to train for strength endurance, hypertrophy, so i.e. muscle building, maximal strength training with kettlebells, and how to develop power with kettlebells. And so we navigate and we teach them how to navigate that performance progression pyramid. And what that does is it builds functional performance, i.e. work capacity, i.e. general physical preparedness. Once you've developed the foundation of functional movements, then you've built on that with functional performance. The top of that pyramid is functional skill. People will say buzzwords like sports specific training when there's really no such thing as sports specific training. You want to train movement patterns, and then those movement patterns will have a carryover to the sport that you're training. But think of functional skill as special physical preparedness. What does that mean? Well, if you have a particular activity that you partake in, if you train jiu-jitsu, if you play golf, if you play frisbee golf, if you, whatever it is, whatever activity that you do, you can now start to build your performance on those skill sets. What happens where people go wrong is they start at the top of the pyramid. They want to do specialized training right away when they have no foundation of functional movements, i.e. fundamental movements, and they've got no foundation of functional performance. So functional movement first, then functional performance, and then from there, functional skill. And if we're looking at kettlebells for building muscle, the exercise that I recommend working your way towards is the kettlebell snatch. Build your endurance and work capacity, but eventually the long cycle clean and jerk, or just the jerk itself and long cycle clean and jerk. So that would be that top of the pyramid, that functional skill that you'd be working towards. So that would be principle number 1. Principle number 1 is you got to build that foundation. You got to build a foundation of functional movements, functional performance before we even get into functional skill. Functional skilled training, right? You could think of that as SPP, specialized or special physical preparedness. The second principle is following the continuity of the training process. So in one of my past videos, or in an upcoming video, I have where we talk about how to train for longevity, right? And one of them is honoring the honoring the three principles of program design, one of which is continuity of the training process. So what this would look like for building muscle is set something that you can stay consistent with. That's essentially what this principle is about. Continuity. How can you maintain a continuous approach? So find a schedule, or build a schedule that you know that you can stay consistent with. If that's 3 days per week, then build your life around strength training 3 days per week. If it's 4 days per week, you get the idea. Develop a schedule that you can maintain based on your lifestyle and all the demands that come with your life. Start there. As you're building out your training, plan your training in 4-week cycles. Why 4-week cycles? Well, you need 2 weeks for adaptation. Your body's on a 2-week delay. So pretty much what you do today, and if you do it continuously, what you do today, and if you do it continuously, you won't see the fruits of that work for at least 2 weeks, at a minimum, at least 2 weeks. So if you start strength training today, you're not going to see the muscle building for at least 2 weeks. Same thing when it comes to your diet. If you start a diet, you're not going to start seeing the effects, like the fat loss effects, for at least 2 weeks. And the opposite is also true. If you fall off the wagon and you indulge into cheeseburger and ice cream or something like that, you do it once, that's not going to completely sabotage your efforts. It's when you do it continuously, it seems like you wake up one day and your clothes just don't fit. That's usually the 2-week delay. So our body, again, this is my own experience of coaching for over 13 years, students in our gym. This is what I've noticed and observed in my own training and training over 1,200 plus clients through the Hardstyle Academy, is your body's on a 2-week delay. So plan your training in 4-week cycles. And the reason for that, as I mentioned, 2-week adaptation. But once we make the adaptation, we need 2 additional weeks to stabilize, to solidify those gains before we make an adjustment and make a change, because we want to make sure that we can maintain that change. Okay, so plan your training, your muscle building training, in 4-week blocks, 2 weeks for adaptation, 2 weeks to stabilize. I mentioned this already in principle number 1. There's going to be some overlap in some of these principles, but choose compound exercises, as already mentioned: clean, press, squat, lunge. Those are the fundamentals that we teach our students in level 1 training of the Hardstyle Academy. Also, choose compound lifts. A compound lift is not the same thing as a compound exercise. Just think like compounding interest, like building on top of that, right? So building on top of. Compound lifts would be putting multiple lifts together. I'm not talking about a complex. This would be known as a chain. So let's say like clean and press, that would be a compound lift, because it's 2 compound exercises bolted together. So clean and press, clean and jerk, clean and squat. You could put a series together like the exercises I gave: clean, press, squat, lunge. You would do 1 clean, 1 press, 1 squat, 1 lunge. And you could repeat that, 3 times. That will put you in an environment to build muscle with kettlebells, and also including complexes as well. So the difference between complexes and compound lifts, or complexes and chains, is training with complexes, where you do all of the repetitions for each exercise, like sequentially. So if we used clean, press, squat, lunge as an example, let's say you did 3 cleans, 3 presses, 3 squats, 3 lunges per side. That would be a complex, right? So doing all the reps for each exercise. The difference between that, like systemically, what's happening to your body, the difference between that and 1 clean, 1 press, 1 squat, 1 lunge, and you repeat that 3 times, the difference there is, with complexes, you're going to create more localized fatigue. Like you're going to feel your shoulders burning. You're going to feel your abs burning, like more local, concentrated fatigue, versus like compound lifts and chains. The difference there is the chains are you're going to stay more fresh, because you're moving from one exercise to the next. But what you're going to notice is more globalized fatigue. Like the whole nervous system is going to be shot essentially. So it's good to have a combination of both. Complexes would probably be, I would probably lean more towards complexes if the goal is building muscle, but you want to get stronger too, because the stronger that you are, the more work that you can do, the more tension that you can sustain, if you will. So the whole point there is keep a good combination of both, essentially. So that's principle number 2, continuity of the training process. Create a schedule that you know that you can stay consistent with. Plan your training in 4-week cycles, 2 weeks for adaptation, 2 weeks to stabilize the gains that you've built, whether it's muscle gains or strength gains. Use compound exercises, clean, press, squat, lunge as an example, what we take our clients through. A compound lifts would be a combination of 2 compound exercises bolted together. So a chain is an example, clean press, right? Long cycle is an example of that. Third principle is load management. You've heard me talk about this multiple times in our videos, because it's a key principle. You're going to notice things that I talk about the same things a lot over and over throughout the channel is because these are key principles to seeing long-term results. They're key principles to building a stronger, leaner, more capable body. So load management, this is an acronym that I call Vader, kind of like Darth Vader. The acronym is volume with respect to total repetitions, right? So total sets, and total tonnage, like how much weight are you moving in a training session. So those are ways to track how much volume that you're doing. So long-term gains, whether it's strength and even building muscle, is going to be built through volume using light to medium weights. What are light to medium weights? Light to medium weights would be something, if we're going to give it a percentage of 1 rep max, you're looking at 60 to 65% of your 1 rep max. Building the majority of your volume there is going to help you build muscle with kettlebells. If you don't know what your 1 rep max is with kettlebells, let's say the press, then it's likely going to be let's just say a pair of kettlebells that you can press probably 15 times, like 15 to 20 times. So if you're a strong guy, this will probably be a pair of 24 kilo bells. If you're an intermediate kettlebell user, maybe 20s. If you're a beginner kettlebell user, probably 16 kilogram bells. So 35 pounds, 44 pounds, and 53 pounds respectively. So getting in your volume, that's the first part of load management, right? The first part of the Vader acronym there. The second part of the Vader acronym is intensity. So what are the weights that you're using? Or it could be your effort. And also volume distribution across multiple intensity zones. So yes, building muscle needs to be used with building muscle. The weights you would need to use would be 65% weights, but you also want to incorporate other intensity zones to work on building strength as well. So you'd want to include weights in the 70 to 80% zone. You'd want to include weights from the 80 to 90% zone, but the average load that you're using is like 60 to 65%. And what that does is it allows you to train as often. I believe it was Vladimir Zatsiorsky, he's a famous Soviet scientist. He said, the key to performance, or the key to strength, I'm paraphrasing here, he says, is you need to train as often as possible, as heavy as possible, but while staying as fresh as possible. So what I'm teaching you here about load management allows you to do all things. You can train as often as you like because you're varying the volume. You can train as heavy as you like because the average weight that you're going to be lifting is 65%. But that doesn't mean that you're only exclusively using those lighter weights. You will surf the 70% weights, which would be like a 10 rep max type kettlebell, and 80 to 90%. So that would be like somewhere around 5 rep max bell. Okay. So, but integrating all those into your training allows you to train heavy, but then as you start to get fatigued, you can drop down to those lighter weights. All this goes towards building muscle with kettlebells with the right amount of volume. The third part of the Vader protocol is exercise selection. So knowing what exercises, which will put you in an environment to build muscle. So exercises that will boost your testosterone and growth hormone. And so what we know and what we've observed when it comes to strength training is your grind exercises, press, squat, deadlift, pull up, those muscles boost testosterone. And what we know about growth hormone, think of growth hormone as like kind of fountain of youth. It's going to help you recover. It's also going to help you build muscle. The exercises that promote release of growth hormone are your ballistic or dynamic in nature exercises. So sprinting, plyometrics, and then submaximal plyometrics, which is our kettlebell exercises: snatch, clean, clean and jerk. Push press is a hybrid exercises, but you were looking at within the context of this exercise. I think the clean, honestly, man, I think in my opinion, the clean is probably the best kettlebell exercise to build muscle. Think about it. I mean, you want to build some guns. You want to put muscle on your shoulders. You want to put muscle on your traps, and you want to put muscle on your biceps. The kettlebell clean is where it's at. It does it. Just think about it. Let's say you work up to 10 sets of 10 with a pair of 24 to 32 kilo bells. What you're doing is you are ballistically bicep curling 106 to 140 pounds, depending on which weights that you're using. But if you're using a pair of 32s, you're ballistically bicep curling 140 pounds and you're doing it for volume. I think you're going to get pretty jacked with a pair of kettlebells. Okay. Exercise selection is critical. You want to choose the right exercises that are going to boost testosterone, boost growth hormone, and a combination of your grinds and ballistics do that, which is why the key exercises that we have our clients use in level 1 of the Hardstyle Academy is clean press, squat, and reverse lunge. So we're getting them both grind and ballistic exercises. We're putting them in an environment to promote muscle building with kettlebells. The fourth part of the Vader protocol is density. Density is total work completed in a certain time frame. So if you set a timer for 30 minutes and you're going to do, clean and press sets of 3, let's say at the end of that 30 minutes, you do, 15 sets. Well, the next week, when it comes to repeat that same protocol, set a goal. Well, I'm going to try to do a 20% increase. So if I did 15 reps, I'm going to try to shoot for like 15. If I did 15 reps, I'm going to try to shoot for, let's say 20 reps in 30 minutes. So that's density there. And you're also increasing the effort. So you're going to get some conditioning work. You're going to be under tension longer because your rest periods are shorter. And that puts you in an environment for muscle building. And that brings me to the last part of the Vader protocol, which I just mentioned, is rest periods. Knowing how to manage your rest periods to keep you under tension, but also to promote recovery as well. So all that goes into load management. Another part of load management is effort, as I mentioned. What we know, and quite frankly, we really don't know how. Well, some exercise physiologists and doctors will say we know exactly how to build, how muscle builds. We really don't know, but we know what buttons to push. We know that if we increase volume, we potentially can build muscle. We know that if we increase calories, we can build muscle. We know that if we push these buttons, we know that we can have an influence on how the body builds muscle. But to say we know exactly what things are happening that trigger muscle mass, I don't think we can truly say that. But that's besides the point. Effort is another way to increase muscle building opportunities. So I talked about that with density, but another way to increase effort, if you're limited on kettlebell selection, and let's say you don't have a pair of 24 kilo bells, one way that you can increase effort is with something called the Russian rest pause. So the Russian rest pause is, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're going to do 3 presses. So instead of cleaning the bell up and just knocking out your presses, what we know about building muscle is the longer we keep our body under tension, the more muscle damage we create. And so how can we do that? So a traditional rest pause is clean the bell, press it, put it down, shake it out for 1 or 2 seconds, clean it up, right? Until you do all 3 reps. That would be a traditional rest pause. Well, the Soviets, as nasty as they are, you just hold the bell. So you clean the bell, and what we do with our students in the Hardstyle Academy is we'll have them take the full minute. Like each set is a full minute in duration. So if they're doing sets of 3, you're doing a press every 20 seconds, right? So you clean the bell, press, hold it in the rack. So you're doing your carry, hold in the rack, keeping everything connected. At the 20-second mark, press, bring it back in, At the 40-second mark, press, bring it back in, park. So that whole set takes a whole minute. And then rinse and repeat on the other side. What are we doing there? Well, we're increasing the effort through the rest pause, increasing our opportunities for building muscle with a kettlebell. The last part of load management here, this literally helps you manage the load and recovery, is food. If you want to build muscle, number one, muscle building comes through, right? Through the resistance training, right? Because if you just eat a bunch of food without strength training, you just get fat. So the primary mechanism for building muscle is going to be the strength training component. But the second part that accelerates that is getting in the right amount of food, having the right number of total calories based on your goals, based on your current weight, your body fat percentage, how much activity you're going to be doing, getting the right total calories. So that way you're not just taking in just random amounts of food and you get fat. And now not only do you build muscle, but not only did you build muscle, but you also added body fat to your frame as well. That's not something that we want. But to build muscle with kettlebells, we also got to make sure we have our food dialed in. So knowing your total number of calories that you want to take in, total number of grams of protein based on, again, body weight, goal body weight, how many grams of protein per serving based on body weight. Like these are all things that you want to have dialed in. And then when it comes to getting in your total calories, if you want to build muscle and drop body fat, that's totally possible with kettlebells. I recommend eating at maintenance for, again, this whole concept of 2 weeks. Remember, the body's like on a 2-week delay. So eating at maintenance for 2 weeks, and then you hit a deficit. And when I like to take a conservative approach with our students, let's just say as an example, we cut 200 calories after 2 weeks, and then we maintain that for 2 weeks for an adaptation, and then maintain it another 2 weeks to stabilize the gains. And then from there, either go into another deficit until you reach that goal that you're chasing. But once you've been there for like 46 weeks, I don't like keeping our students in a caloric deficit like indefinitely. You would need to eat at either maintenance or a small surplus for a small period of time, and then rinse and repeat, go back into another cut. And you basically do this until you reach your desired end outcome, right? So 2 to 4 week cycles, just like your strength training, 2 weeks to adapt, 2 weeks to stabilize. Principle number 4 is plan specialized variety into your training. So there's a concept that we take our students through in the academy. It's called method cycling. So method cycling, I've already talked about chains and complexes, right? We talked about chains, we talked about complexes, knowing how to cycle those. So example, complexes, I've already explained that, and that would be all the repetitions for each exercise, right? Sequentially. So like, let's say day 1 could be complexes, and then day 2 would be chains. So 1 rep of each exercise, and you cycle through however many total reps. And then day 3 would be what we call hybrids. A hybrid is a combination of both chains and complexes into one session. And so surfing that method cycle, right? Cycling the training method, that aligns to continuity of the training process. It aligns to load management, because now we put our body under extreme fatigue locally through complexes on day 1. Day 2, fatigue as well, but it's more globalized fatigue. And then day 3 is both. Day 3, the volume and the intensity peaks there towards the end of the week. So method cycling brings principle number 2, continuity of the training process, and it brings principle number 3, load management, and it ties them together. So that's method cycling. It's another way to build muscle with kettlebells. The second part, another way to include specialized variety into building muscle with kettlebells, is surfing the press continuum. What's the press continuum? It's continuing, still continuity of training here, but you're working on the pattern of the press, the overhead push. So we've got strict press, push press, and jerk. We don't teach our clients the bent press, but you could include the bent press if you wanted to. You can include the side press. There's many variations of press, but we're talking about kettlebells here. So you could include the bent press. We don't, because it's a super high level skill. Remember how we talked about functional movements, functional performance, then functional skill? Bent press would be in that functional skill area. And so that's not something that we teach them in level 1 of the Hardstyle Academy, because we're just not there yet. speaking of the Press Continuum, that's not something that we teach our students in the academy until level 5. So by the time they've gotten to the Press Continuum, they've already set the foundation. Like they've already built functional movements, functional performance, and now they're ready for functional skill by the time they get to level 5. I'm just telling you about the Press Continuum now because that is a way to add specialized variety to keep you fresh, so you can train hard while staying fresh as possible. I'm talking about it now just because these are one of the principles to building muscle with kettlebells. Another example of specialized variety would be variations of squat. So we've got, front squat, we've got single kettlebell front squat, we've got goblet squat, we've got reverse lunge. There's many different variations there that you can include into your training. And then the fifth principle, this one is the most overlooked and the most underappreciated, in my opinion. And I feel, in my opinion, this will make or break people when it comes to building muscle with kettlebells, is keep a training / nutrition log. Plain and simple. It sounds super simple, it's easy. It sounds easy to do, but it's also so simple and so easy that people don't do it. Why keep a training log? Because what gets logged, right? What gets tracked gets managed. If you want to build muscle with kettlebells, you got to have a plan, right? So plan, and then you got to do the plan, and then you got to review the plan. Gather the data, review the data. What are the results? What adjustments do we need to make so we can continue moving forward? And your training log, it's one of your 3 truth tellers. I've written about this in the past. There are 3 truth tellers that will shoot you straight every single time when it comes to your kettlebell strength training efforts. Truth teller number 1 is how you look in the mirror. Like, you just can't deny the mirror will shoot you straight every time if you're building muscle. Keeping a daily progress picture. Get up in the morning, just take a shot. I take a picture. I've been taking a picture. So I did 75 hard. I did 75 hard in spring of 2021. And that's when I started just keeping a daily picture. And I've pretty much maintained that habit for almost, what are we now making this video? 3 years. It's been 3 years. And almost without fail, I've kept a morning picture of myself, front facing, side, and behind my back. I've, without fail, pretty much kept a picture of myself since 2021. And that will shoot you straight every single time if you're seeing progress, if you're building muscle with your kettlebells. So that goes into keeping a log, right? Some sort of log, even if it's a picture. The second truth teller is how your clothes fit. There's no such thing as, well, I'm building muscle, but my waist is getting bigger. Like, those 2 things don't go together. And also the whole idea of a pound of muscle and a pound of fat, like, muscle weighs more than body fat. That's a myth, because a pound of muscle and a pound of fat are the exact same thing. It's still a pound. It's like what weighs more, a ton of feathers or a ton of bricks? Well, they're the same. They're both a ton. You're going to have more feathers than you will have bricks, because feathers will take up more mass. Same thing with body fat, more fluff, right? The more body fat you have, if you gain 5 pounds of body fat, but you also gain 5 pounds of muscle, you still gain 10 pounds. But fat takes up more mass than muscle does. So there's no such thing as, man, my clothes are getting tighter around my waist, but I'm, maybe the weight that I gained, was muscle mass. Well, if your clothes are fitting you tight, then you gain fat, you didn't gain muscle. So truth teller number 2 is, how are your clothes fitting? And then truth teller number 3, keep a training and or nutrition log. That will shoot you straight every single time if you're maintaining and you're honoring the continuity of the training process. If you are not keeping a training log and you're not seeing the results, if you're not seeing the results that you envision, or if you're not building the muscle and you haven't been keeping a training log, how do you know what progress that you're making? You don't. So just a quick recap. Principle number 1, set your foundation first. Build connective tissue, build functional movements. Then on top of that, functional performance. And on top of that, you can start looking into functional skill training, right? Snatch, clean and jerk, bent press. Maintain continuity of the training process. Build a schedule that you can stay consistent with, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever that is for you. Plan your training in 4-week training cycles, 2 weeks for adaptation, 2 weeks to stabilize. Choose compound exercises, compound lifts. Principle number 3 is load management following the Vader protocol: volume, intensity, exercise, selection, density, and rest periods. Dial in your nutrition. You got to know how many calories you're getting in each and every day based on your current goals and what you're trying to accomplish. Prioritize protein in your meals. Make sure you're getting in the right amount of protein based on your activity. Got to cycle through maintenance, deficit, and surplus. Got to know how to make those adjustments there. Depending on which part of the cycle, maintenance, deficit, surplus, I recommend 2 to 4 week cycles there. 2 weeks to adapt, 2 weeks to stabilize before you make an adjustment. Number 4, plan specialized variety, right? So example, method cycling, kettlebell complexes, chains, hybrids. Those allow you to integrate both continuity of the training process and load management because you're moving from one method to the next. Each method has a different demand and creates a different adaptation in the body, all of which create an environment for building muscle with your kettlebells. Press Continuum, if you got the skill, navigate through press, push, press, and jerk. And the number 5, keep a training log or nutrition log. You got to plan the work, you got to do the work, then you review the work. Because at the end of the day, what gets logged gets managed. If you need help putting this together, I will put a link in the comment section so you can check out the Hardstyle Academy. We've got a 16-week initial coaching program that covers everything that I talked about today: how to set a foundation, how to train the clean, the press, the squat, the reverse lunge, how to build a consistent training schedule, load management, specialized variety, training log. We provide all of that in the first level of the Hardstyle Academy. So if you need help building a stronger, leaner, more capable body, building muscle with your kettlebells, we would love to have you as a member in the Academy. So I will put that link in the comments or in the description. And if you've got any questions about it, please just drop me a comment below. If you are a free member of the Academy now, drop me a direct message there in the Academy and we'll be happy to get you squared away. But that's all I got for you today, man. Appreciate you watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.